Thank you all for your patience. We were trying to get some updates from our team that's working in the field so we could provide you with current information. My name is Debbie Hersman. I am the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. I am joined today by Mr. Robert Aceta, who's our investigator in charge. He's leading the investigation for the NTSB and our team here on site. They've been at work. Our investigators have been at work since this morning. It's been our first full day on scene. We've had a very busy and productive day, and I'd like to provide you an update about the progress we've made, and then would be happy to take any questions that you might have. Last evening, we held an organizational meeting with parties of interest to the accident. We talked about our investigative process and procedures and outlined the plan of work for the coming days. We're currently working very closely with the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the Washington Department of Transportation, the Washington State Patrol, and Mullen Trucking, the operator of the tractor trailer. We have established various groups that are being led by NTSB investigators. I'm going to talk about some of our groups and the work that they're undertaking. The work of the first group that I'm going to discuss is focused on the highway. And in this case, it's specifically focused on the bridge. It's led by NTSB investigators. One's a professional engineer and the other is a metallurgist that is working in our materials lab. That group had spent the day so far identifying the bridge, and they were examining the bridge both from the deck and from the water. So they were looking at the superstructure, the deck, and the substructure. I had the opportunity to accompany them on a boat this morning for an up-close look at the dropped span. Let me tell you about some of those observations from the water level. When you're down there that close, the trauma of the bridge collapse is evident. You're struck by how enormous the structure really is. In the pictures that many people have seen that have been taken from a distance, you can certainly identify that it's a large structure, that it's a bridge. But when you're in a boat right next to it, it offers a very different perspective. The bridge members, and I'm going to be talking about these members, these are I-beams and they're box beams that are the connectors of this truss bridge. They are as large as a person. The color of the bridge is grayish green, but there are many sections in the dropped span where the underlying paint or the orange primer is visible beneath that grayish green color. You can see that the concrete section of that dropped span has slid off of its girders like icing sliding off of a cake. It's a floating bridge deck, and it has completely slipped in certain sections right off of the deck. The passenger car, the truck, and the camper trailer are all partially submerged in the water. The airbags in the passenger car have deployed. The truck's airbags have not. The truck's passenger door stands ajar, and you can see the fast-moving current swirling in and around both of those vehicles and the camper. I'd like to talk to you about some specific observations from our investigators of the failed bridge span. Our investigators have reviewed the original design drawings of that span and of the entire bridge, and they have compared those design drawings with the structure that is visible in the water. So let's just orient everybody where we are. We're on I-5 in between Burlington and Mount Vernon, and we're approaching the bridge traveling southbound. We talked yesterday about the makeup of this bridge. There are 4 approach spans on each side of the bridge, and there are 4 deck spans. So as you're approaching, traveling south, the first bridge span that you encounter is number 8. It's span 8. Span number 8 is the one that has dropped from the structure and is in the water. Each of the 4 bridge spans is 160 feet in length, and this span, span 8, has 6 upper frames. So there are upper frames or connectors at the top of the bridge span, and then there are lower frames. And I'm going to focus now on the upper frames of span 8. Those 6 upper frames are numbered U0 to U5. The first frame that's encountered is numbered U5. It's the north portal frame. It's the opening of the bridge. It's the first frame that you encounter. The damage to U5 is severe. The next frame in line is U4. This is called a sway frame. Frames U4 through U1 are sway frames. The first frame is a portal frame. U4 is underwater with only portions of those connecting members that are visible to investigators from the bridge deck or from the boat. The next frame is U3. It is also damaged with significant witness marks on it from the impact of the load from the trailer. We have also documented contact with sway frames U2 and U1. From the damage that is visible to the bridge, we can identify contact marks and tearing on the bridge where the load from the tractor trailer impacted those frames. And with respect to the bridge structure itself, we can identify compression buckles, compound fractures, and bending. And those events signal to our investigators that U4 is the node of interest. Again, this is the one section of the bridge that is completely submerged. The first 4 frames of the bridge section that's still standing, this would be span 7, and it's the section that's still standing after the collapse. The first 4 frames of that span also show damage from the tractor trailer's load as well. We see impact and witness marks there. The design of a truss bridge has members and nodes that work together in tension and compression. From the bending and the buckling, the bridge is telling our investigators the story of where the failure originated and how it propagated through the span that dropped into the water. We also have a motor carrier group and human performance investigators. Today they interviewed the truck driver. He was very cooperative and provided information on the accident sequence to our investigators. He described that his first indication of anything being wrong was when he heard and felt contact with the bridge. He described hearing a boom and feeling contact in the vehicle. He pulled over. He exited his vehicle. As he was getting out, he was notified by another motorist that a portion of the bridge had just collapsed. He walked back along the bridge. He looked down. He saw that a section of the bridge had indeed collapsed. He identified that there were individuals on the dropped span and that emergency responders were on scene and that he waited with his truck. He provided interviews to the law enforcement officials that evening. With regard to the use of a pilot car on this trip. The truck driver told our investigators that he met the pilot car driver in the pilot car at the Canadian border. He said he had worked with this organization providing pilot car services in the past, but this was the first time that he had worked with this particular pilot car driver. They arranged that she would notify him via radio communication of any problems encountered along the route. She operated her car ahead of his vehicle. He stated that he did not receive any communication from the pilot driver before he traversed the bridge. He was following the pilot car, and they were both traveling in the right lane as they traversed the bridge. The driver also reported that there was another commercial vehicle traveling in the left lane as he was on the bridge. The commercial driver is 41 years old. He has held a commercial driver's license for over 20 years. He reports working for Mullen Trucking for approximately 8 years. The driver does have experience driving oversized loads, and he has traveled with oversized loads on I-5 in this area before. He reported that he had measured the height of his load multiple times along the route, and he reported that the permit for this vehicle was 15 feet, 0.9 inches, and that he had measured the vehicle multiple times at 15 feet, 9 inches. Investigators are planning to interview the pilot car driver as well, and they're working to set that interview up. There is no signage leading up to or on the bridge describing the bridge's vertical clearance. Washington does not require that vertical clearances be posted on bridges unless the clearance is 14 feet 4 inches or less. The bridge portal, if you look at the opening of the bridge, you can see it's elliptical in shape. It is higher in the middle than it is on the outside corners near the shoulders. At its lowest point on the outside corners, it measures 14 feet 6 inches. The 2010 tractor was pulling, 2010 Kenworth tractor was pulling a 1997 Aspen trailer. Our motor carriers group is evaluating the truck and the tractor trailer. Both of the vehicles are registered in Alberta. There is no significant damage to the tractor or the power unit or the trailer, the flatbed that is pulling, that the tractor is pulling. On top of the trailer is a steel structure, and this is the load that this truck was carrying. A large steel structure. It's royal blue in color. There is visible damage on the top corner of the passenger side of the steel structure, the load that's being carried. That top right corner is crushed, and the blue paint has been stripped off. Inside the steel structure, which is open on the sides, you can see numerous paint chips on the floor of that steel structure that match the color of this bridge. This afternoon, our team is removing the truck from the approach span on the south side to a secure location. They are moving the tractor trailer to this location. It will be on a flat surface rather than an incline so that they can take additional precise measurements and complete the vehicle examination. They have also identified an exemplar load. This is a trailer that has the same type of cargo on top of it. It was being carried by the same trucking company. It's about 10 miles north of the bridge. It's been secured, and we will be also inspecting that exemplar load. Particular focus will be paid to vertical clearances and measurements. Over the coming days, state officials will be working to demolish and remove the down span. Our investigators are working with Washington DOT to ensure that portions of the structure that are of the most interest to us, particularly U4, and the other sections that we'd like to take a closer look at, are secured so we can further assess them. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Can you give us a sense then again of the timing of how long you think it may take until they start taking those parts out of the water?
The question is, how long will it take before sections of the bridge start coming out of the water? That really is up to Washington State to their DOT, how quickly they can get the equipment in position to actually make some of those transfers. I know that they need some barges, some cranes, and some heavier equipment to do that work. I know they're working to arrange it. They've got to get all of that here on location, and so it won't be able to begin until that happens. It really will be very variable depending on the conditions that they're faced with, the currents, the weather, and how difficult it is to get the bridge structure out of the water.
Let me ask you to clarify, the DOT has said that they cannot begin removing debris until your investigative team releases the site to them. Is that how it works? That has to happen first?
The question is, Washington State DOT has said that they cannot begin removing the debris until our team releases the site to them. Our team is working in close coordination with Washington DOT. The investigative activities that we need to conduct can be conducted in parallel with their removal activities. We do not want to hold up the removal of the debris and the repair or replacement of this bridge. We're working very closely with them. We have been working today to do the documentation that we need to do with respect to structures, doing a scan, a laser scan of the bridge section that's still standing. We believe that our work will be completed in a timely manner so as to coincide with their removal efforts.
You mentioned that the span just south of the drop span was also hit. Why didn't it collapse?
The question is, the span to the south, span 7, was also hit. I mentioned that there were 4 strikes to the sway frames on span 7. The question is, why didn't that bridge, that section, also collapse? What we're seeing in span 7 is really a precursor indication of what occurred in span 8. It just wasn't as significant. I mentioned that there is some crush damage to that corner that was the striking corner of the trailer's load. We have to do measurements to determine the exact height at all of those different locations to determine what might have been going on there. But what we do know is that there is evidence that there were strikes, there are witness marks on the structure, on the overhead structure, and also some tire marks on the roadway that we're paying attention to. There is damage to this section, U7, and so it will need to be inspected and determine if anything needs to be addressed or repaired before this section of the bridge can be put back into service.
One of the vertical beams on that section is actually obviously bent. Does that make it, does that pretty much require that repairs be done, or is there a scenario where they can just run it with a bent member? That seems a little bit odd. And does NTSB have any role to play in authorizing, in approving or non-approving what repairs washout might do on the second span?
There are two questions. The first question has to do with a visible to the eye deformation of one of the vertical members on span 7. And the second question is about NTSB's role with respect to the reopening of the bridge. The NTSB is an investigative entity. We're here to investigate the accident, determine the probable cause, and we have the authority to make recommendations that we think are in the best interest of safety. We will not be the ones who inspect or reopen or repair the bridge. That will be up to Washington DOT to do in consultation with Federal Highway Administration and their experts that they identify. With respect to the visible vertical member or structure that is showing some bending, this is in that area of one of those strikes that I mentioned to one of the sway braces above it. That will clearly need to be inspected, evaluated, and if there is structural concern, it will have to be mitigated before they can reopen the bridge.
Ma'am, Dante from 213, by the way. I just wanted to talk about the clearance issue. It seems kind of wrong to say the clearance is 15.9 or 15 to 9 inches when the lowest part of the bridge is 15.6. Shouldn't the clearance be the lowest point of the bridge? And maybe that's what's kind of caused the problem of him thinking he can cross that bridge. I just don't understand why the clearance is different, even though the top part of the bridge is 3 inches higher. It seems like the posted clearance should be the lowest clearance of the bridge. My estimation. What do you think about that?
Thank you, Dante, for identifying yourself and your organization. The question has to do with clearances and what the clearances on the bridge were and what the route clearance was. They have a permit for an oversized load. The vehicle exceeded the width and the height expectations that we would see, and so WashDOT gave them a clearance. On that clearance, they do not say what the specific limits on each of the bridges are. On that permit, it says that the operator is responsible for determining vertical clearances. And from our conversations with State Patrol, what this means is that the company is responsible for sending a pilot car through. If they want a clearance on that route of 15.9, the operator is responsible for assuring that they have the vertical clearance they need to operate on that route. As I mentioned, the permit was for 15 feet, 9 inches. This bridge, at its lowest point, the clearance is 14 feet, 6 inches. The bridge clearance at its lowest point that's on the outside of the bridge near the shoulder, and as I mentioned, it's an elliptical bridge, so you have more clearance towards the middle of the bridge. Those clearances, those heights, are not posted on the bridge. And so it is the responsibility of the operator solely to determine if they can clear through all of the structures on their route.
Hello, I'm sorry, I'm Mark Miller with Como TV News. And, are the drivers of pilot cars responsible for notifying the driver of the tractor of any hazards? And is that part of your investigation to look at the responsibilities and actions of the pilot car driver?
The question is the pilot car driver responsible for making notification to the tractor-trailer driver of hazards along the route? The purpose for having a pilot car to travel ahead of the tractor-trailer with this vertical clearance issue is to ensure that the tractor-trailer can pass safely. The pilot car has a height pole, and that height pole is to be set at a safe level so that the tractor-trailer can clear its route. The pilot car is supposed to drive enough ahead of the tractor trailer that they can radio, by two-way radio, back to the tractor trailer driver of any hazards or obstacles. In the interview with the tractor trailer driver, our investigators asked him about the expectation for communication. And he made it clear to our investigators that as he did a pre-trip conversation with the pilot car driver, that he told her he didn't expect her to radio about every bridge that they crossed if things were okay. But he did expect her to radio back to him if there was a problem. He told our investigators that she did not radio back to him prior to his crossing this bridge. He also was asked about whether or not the height pole on the pilot car ahead of him gave him concern about clearing this bridge. If the height pole touched the bridge, if it wiggled, if it was swaying, he said it did not.
Mike Goodman from Sales Times. Washington Secretary Lynn Pearson made a big point of saying that the bridge was 15.6 at the fog line. You mentioned 14.6 at the lowest clearance. Has there been any discussion by the truck driver or from investigators that because of passing semi or some other reasons that this truck driver was farther right than what he or his company were accustomed to doing with these loads?
You've asked a couple of questions there. Maybe we want to take them one at a time. You want to redo your first question?
Was he farther off to the right than what they were accustomed to doing with that company or even that driver?
The question is whether or not, are you asking about what the tractor trailer driver said?
Yes.
Okay. The question is whether or not the tractor trailer driver said he was further to the right than he would normally be. The tractor trailer driver acknowledged that there was another commercial vehicle traveling across the bridge at the same time that he was traveling across the bridge. It was in the left lane. He was in the right lane. He said that he saw this truck approaching and passing him as he was traversing the bridge. This vehicle that he is driving is a wide load. It is permitted for a wide load. We are looking to see if there's any video evidence. We know that there is some video evidence available. We were looking to be corroborating that video evidence with the interviews conducted with the tractor trailer driver, as well as other witness interviews. And so as far as reaching any conclusions about the position of the vehicle in the lane, I think we'll need to conduct some more interviews and look at the evidence before we make any determinations about that. Additionally, we're identifying tire marks and other things on the roadway that might help us to determine position in lane. When we have more information and evidence gathered and corroborated, we can provide that to you.
Ma'am, I want to talk about the pilot car. As a matter of fact, I want to ask you a question about should it be, is it a law to have a trail car? Because if the driver's theory is true or what he says is true, he got passed. And if you have a trail car along with a pilot car, which I see on plenty of oversized loads, no one can pass him. So is it regulation that you should have not only a pilot car, but a trail car? Or is a trail car optional in this situation?
The questions are, is a trail car required for a wide load? And we do not have any information that a trail car is required for a vehicle like this. I'll take one more question.
One of the pieces of surveillance video shows both vehicles side by side on the bridge. Considering that one load is a wide load, is it possible for both vehicles to be side by side yet stay within their lanes while side by side on the bridge?
The question is it possible for two commercial vehicles to be side by side on the bridge and maintain their lanes when one of those vehicles is a wide load? As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to work to corroborate all of the evidence on scene, both the evidence on the bridge as well as videos and photographs. And when we are able to corroborate that, we will identify it. Again, we're going to release factual information rather than analytical information, and so we will continue to do that. We will provide another press briefing tomorrow, and Kelly will let you know when that is. Thank you all very much.